being such a large industry, you know, what are the possibilities, what are the options for very large agri-techs? Because we all know that all of you are solving some very large problems, right? But, you know, where is this, you know, have seen a lot of changes that have happened here. So without much further ado, I'm going to kick off with you, Vivek, right? And I think you wear two hats, right? One is from actually being a debt provider to agri-techs, and the other is by being a financier of agri value chains, or a potential financier of agri value chains, right? So, you know, in both those experiences, perhaps if you could talk us through, you know, the growth, the scale that you have seen, and, you know, what do you think are the factors behind that? And are you optimistic or pessimistic about that?
Yeah, to start with, I am very optimistic about the sector, and I think being an agrarian economy, we all are very optimistic. We, as India, we understand agri a lot. Maybe we, you know, from a academic point of view, may not understand it, but the ground level farmer understands it really well. And what we have what we saw over the years is that if you look at various agri-techs or the companies that have come up to support farmers, the FPOs, mandis, the wholesalers, retailers, traders, exporters. So you will see that there is a pattern where everyone is trying to solve for some problem, which maybe at ground level someone is facing. So if you look at from an input side, that is, you know, some of the larger startups would be solving for, you know, making available the seeds or the fertilizers or the pesticides right from large institutions like UPL or other institutions directly to the farmer door place. And that is enabled through maybe some tech, that is enabled through some kind of a working capital solution. It's a blend of both, and they are trying to create a direct linkage between the market and the producer, just to ensure that there is no leakage to the intermediaries. While on the output side, both on the dry output as well as on the fresh produce, if you look at dry output side, then also from farmers, the material moves to maybe the FPOs and then onward to those mandis, and then obviously your wholesaler retailers. And on the panel we have people who have been, you know, trying to address those issues that are there. So largely what we have seen is in terms of the growth of industry, we have seen that there has been a lot of dollars coming in, and you know, investors are trying to support the founders who have been trying to solve some problem where there is a scale. So in this, if you look at this value chain, scale is not a challenge.
You're saying that the financing solutions to drive that scale have been missing in the market.
That we are creating solutions, but definitely a lot, like one of the initiatives that the government has also taken is create specific funds for the agri-tech sector. So those...
you guys have obviously grown quite a bit over the last years. You've raised a lot of money. You're probably the poster child of being acquired in this sector. So, you know, all of those good things here, right? When you started, is this the scale that you expected to get to, or is it you know, beyond your expectations or below your expectations here?
Yeah, I think we didn't really expect it to sort of scale, or even for us to do well, or to survive for that matter, right? I think that's the first 3-4 years, and then sort of cross the path. But I think the last 2-3 years, I think we want to be much more larger scale, sort of, at least whenever we had a model, we want to really amplify that and go behind it. But then that's when you realize the actual reality of Indian agri, right? It's so tough to sort of operate on the ground today. I mean, largely because you have low margin structures, so you can't really put in a lot of you know, cost structures around and sort of come out profitably. So I think now we are in that journey of sort of now doing a second round, I would say, in terms of saying that, okay, hey, now how do we really build it for Indian agri with the right cost structures in place, and sort of ensure that we add value in the right places. So I think that's the journey that we're going through now. Now I think after the last 3 years of going through this, I think now we become a little more humble in sort of having a low expectation from us. And there's a value, you're creating a real value, and then there is a retention happening, and then you're able to at least see operational profitability, right, before we really press the scale pedal. I think it will be very premature for the entire industry that we sort of look at some of the vanity metrics that you spoke about, like things like unicorn at this point, putting unnecessary, sort of distracting the whole focus on more important things.
That you've seen change over the years, that you think will continue to build very large food companies here?
So I'd like to talk about ourselves. In this journey, what we felt that we are not only we make food, but we are a very good operator and executor. Actually, we master the art of running the QSR. It's not only about the product. So wherever I get a space, or we know what is to be done. So over a period of time, we realize that, and now we've come up with different brands, which is doing excellent. So that's how we have been working, and we can say that we have cracked the art of QSR in India. So that's how we have been working, and I think with this thing, we can really grow faster, and India is a huge market, right? Right now we have around 590 stores, and I think in the next couple of years, we are thinking of getting into 1,000 stores, all are company owned and operated. Yeah.
So an investor once told me about a IPO in the Philippines market, and a similar IPO of a food chain in India. And the IPO and he said, the size of the Philippines market was roughly the same size as the top. He was not talking all of India. He was talking about the top part of India that sort of consumes. And this was somewhere, that was a couple of $1 billion. The Indian one was like, $500 million or something like that, or even less than that, I think, if I'm not mistaken. So his thing to me was that, the value of this in the Indian market is always very limited, because it's very fragmented. Or the nature of us eating doesn't quite, we want to cut down prices to the bare minimum, right? We're very value for money conscious. And if I go back to what Vasu was saying, till you get a higher price, some of these things you can't really do. The margins are very limited in all of these chains. It's already very efficient, right? So do you see, the Indian market, is it just the fact that we haven't quite had the right products, but that the potential for very large scale exists? Or do you think that it is a addition of many micro markets, and so for anyone to be large, you need to be addressing different segments, different mini markets?
I think it's an interesting question. I think it exists, and I think even the pricing. I like to go back to the supply chain part first of all, where now in the basic thing, what happens in the farm, there has to be a cultural change, because what they are growing over ages, what is the demand, what we are demanding, exactly they are growing it or not. If they are not growing it, then the rate and everything goes up. Then when you make a product, then it becomes very expensive at that point of time. If this production, then matching it with the food processing and supply chain happens parallelly, then I think that prices.
Farmer side. So you're saying that the reason that we have limited consumption on the front side is because the farmer price fluctuate, the pocket friendly is important for the consumer.
Yes.
And we can't really deliver on that because there is too much fluctuations on the back side of the supply chain here.
Yes.
So if you crack that, you can kind of, as long as you can guarantee, so the limitation to the front end scale is the back end scale.
So at our scale, we are looking at a backward integration of raw materials, from vegetables to even the fish, meat, everything.
Fish, meat, everything to be fully
so that my rate doesn't go up, and we can give a very good experience to the customer, so that the prices doesn't go up.
Really? Yeah.
A little water.
A little bit of water. Not as much as we use today, so no climate impact out of all of that. We don't need any soil or soil regeneration or any such thing. We can just plant all forests and be done with it. This next stage, new gen agriculture, if I may call it that, Where do you see that? Have you seen, the adoption for this change over the years that you've been doing this? And tell me a little bit more about, what do you think are the drivers if there is larger adoption happening for what you do?
Zero knowledge on science. So I asked one fundamental question to my co-founder, who's a scientist. So I said, see, you're telling me that you can grow without soil and you can use less water, and it's far more efficient than traditional farms. Then isn't everybody around you as a farmer should be already using this tech by now? Something wrong, right, fundamentally. So over the last 4 years, we worked specifically on that as to how do we bring down the capex, how do we increase the range of products that you can grow with this tech, right? To answer, both the problem statement, both of them mentioned, right? How do you produce low cost while the farmer also earns more? Means that you have to grow more per square feet, right? Specifically in terms of price fluctuation, or also happens due to seasonal variations that come in. So can we negate the seasonal variations and grow consistent produce throughout? And so I was just having a chat behind, so where they consume almost about 2 tons of cabbage, he was mentioning, a day, right? So now with our tech, we can just grow it in 2 acres. Right, and that's their whole demand, and I'm not sure how many acres they're currently buying with. So what we are looking at is how do we just start fresh, right? Leave aside what we're doing, and then how do we completely reimagine and see how we can do things better, so that farmer earns more because they are able to grow more. We are using lesser, and the end consumers are all benefited because you're going to get flat prices across.
So I'm going to come back to that commerce graduate. And
it specifically took us a lot of time in research because a lot of things had to be solved on the hardware front, on the crop science, on the seeds that were suitable for kind of varieties. So no matter how much money we pour in specifically into this, we just still have to wait for the plants to grow and get the right varieties. So we spent enough time now on this, and we believe that now if the right policies kick in and right amount of support comes in from subsidizing some portion of this tech, I think it's going to explode, is what I believe.
So am I hearing you say that it also, while the tech has matured, and all of this, maybe the last 5-10 years has been about the tech maturity to happen, that you would still need ecosystem enablers like subsidies, etc., for this to kind of happen.
At large scale.
Will it be price competitive ever?
Yeah, so like you were mentioning, so we position ourselves as a technology play. So we're not specifically building only for India or...
so let's take the globe, it's okay.
So if the question is when will you be unicorn, that's a very difficult question to ask, but I think
I guess my question is, and I said I'm going to use the word unicorn as a proxy. So I'm going to use the proxy I'd like to think about is that, look, if we are, and I'm just going to use India as an example for a minute, $300 billion, $500 billion of produce, so, food, agriculture industry over here. Let's just say 10% of that, right? Like, what do you think is the time scales that it would take to get to that?
I think we internally project somewhere in the next 4 to 5 years, specifically.
Okay. So not another decade. That in the next 5 years there would be a significant.
It depends on how the macro situation, specifically the climate and all of it, turn out. So things get worse outside, we'll become unicorn faster.
So maybe I come to you. I'm I think it's important that a decade has gone by and that this is a scale, because again, if I look at the agri-tech startups across the spectrum, they haven't been the largest raisers. I can be super of sector. It is large. It is pretty. It's 15% of our GDP. That's not peanuts. Yeah. So, are we a year away? Are we 2 years away? Or are we still, too many other infra?
No,
I'm not talking about the vanity unicorn.
I'm just getting it out of the way
yes,
so that.
Let's get that out of the way. I thought I got it out of the way. We're not talking about vanity unicorns.
Yeah. So if you ask me, I think I don't think so. Next decade is always going to be a breakthrough for us, in my personal view. But if you can get some 3 things streamlined over the next decade, the decade after the decade, right? So I think my expectation or my wish list for the next decade is 3 things, right? One, I think, like I said, I think India doesn't have a production problem. India has a consumption problem, right? I mean, we are a food secure nation. We already produce more than we consume. Yeah. Only way if you can sort of figure out increase the consumption, like I said, the global market, or you bring in value-added products which sort of expands the pie. Okay. So that's one. The consumption has to grow, which I think will grow the way India is sort of doing now, with the per capita going up, with the GDP going up, such a piece of it, right? Given that India is a unique market where both production, 13 million farmers, and then about this side you have about 1.3 million retailers. I mean, at this sort of fragmentation, it's very tough to drive any sort of efficiency in terms of last mile delivery, all of it, right? So that can only get better when you have a strong rails. Now
that kind of changing on the front side, because it's the lid on the box. We are all very happy to say we are value for money, pocket friendly, all of that, but it's the lid on the box. So do you see any signs of that changing where people are like, I pay more for quality, I pay more for this, or is it just rock bottom?
No, it is changing.
Yeah.
Time
so
is
tell us more about it and what do you think will happen
I think now everything is changing. Industry is changing. The perceptions of people are changing. Health-wise, people have started seeing that they want to spend a little bit more but get a better quality of product. So that has become, because of the development and the growth. The income has become high, and when your income becomes high, you start living the standard of life which your income supports. So the spending power goes up, and that's what is happening. We're seeing that change year on year basis. We find that more and more people are coming to that bracket. So we mark the bracket, more less than 100 rupees, 150 rupees, 200 rupees price point. So we track consumer, which are the more consumer consumption, the category of consumer who is in which category. So this is changing. Yeah? Now today people doesn't need to think about it. If they want to spend, they can spend. Yeah.
So that change is already happening.
So
in the next 5 years or so, you expect that to pick. I mean, if we continue on our growth path.
Yes.
Yeah, and we don't have some kind of other stuff happen. Yeah. Which Vihari, we'll all, the rest of us are all pegging for it not to happen. So I will just, see more of that piece happening. And Vivek, on your side, from a
the importance of finance in the agri-tech space. So what role do you think that the government can play in making the agri-tech startups a unicorn, or how the government can help?
So that financiers can come in and do some leg of the financing. So let's say from A point to B point, whereas which is between FPOs and the wholesalers. So that leg a financier can come and support. But there has to be some kind of because in farming, one more thing that you have to be mindful of is the crop failure, which is...
So we have seen a number of startups in food previously also, and there's a lot of competition in this sector. So especially when it comes to food like momos, which are famous in the street food sector. So how did you get the confidence that taking it to a formal sector would actually work out? And how did you also understand like you could win in a competition wherein there is already a lot of competition? How did you feel like I could enter this and also win this over? Because this is something a number of people with so many ideas feel, if it could have been done, if it would have succeeded, it would have already succeeded. Why did it not happen till now? So this is something most of the youngsters are doubtful about.
So I'll go. When I was in college, we saw this Domino's, we saw KFC, the international brand coming to India. We were thinking that can you make a brand out of momos that can go international. That was the thinking when we started. And that's how we started working, and that is working well for us now. So we think that we can expand and take our brand to international level. That's what we have been putting our effort to, and that's how it is going. So it is going well right now. So that's how we have started our thinking. The thinking. And what we did is, there are a lot of QSR. We have made a product into a category. Now, in food courts or wherever you go, Momo was sold in Chinese cuisine. It was not a brand or something like that. So we made a brand out of momos, and we have different varieties of momos. That's how we innovated, and with time we also changed a lot of things. So I feel that with time and innovation, if you change, then that's the way to success.
Scenario, agri-tech starting or a management background. Do you think a lack of ground-up understanding is a limiting factor in terms of solving for problems that the farmers face, or a lot of the problems within the ecosystem?
Who did well or doing well are not really from the specific industry, right? But it'll change eventually.
A farmer is the only person in the entire business community who purchases everything in retail, sells everything in wholesale, and pays freight for both the sides. He's the only person in the entire business ecosystem. He does that. And your company, your startup addresses the entire one side of the supply chain part of it. And the major, I tried and tested it for myself when I was 10 years ago. The major hurdle I faced was to convince the farmer to trust us. How did you manage to, create trust among the farming community? Because it's not that easy. The agriculture universities were cracking their heads for last 50 years to crack this major part of it. They have a separate agriculture extension, education verticals within their universities. How could you do that? I'm really interested. I wanted to know it from you.
No, I think it again comes down to as they see that they can get value by working with you. And because we were more on the output side than on the input side, there was generally a better affinity towards what we're doing among the farmers. And with that, you be consistent, and then you don't screw up, don't be naughty, and then largely we are good.
From each of you, just one taker for all the agri startup and food startup sitting over there.
So I'm going to add to that, since you want that, using myself from that. But I also wanted you guys to sort of perhaps add that, if you had one wish for what you would, could be addressed that would help you scale a lot faster, what would it be? Just one, huh? You may have 10, but pick the biggest one, and then you can address his question on.
For our tech, right? And so many new technologies are coming out in ag space. So if we can holistically look and make some policy changes that can ensure this adoption much faster, I think we'll see changes. So,
A lot more efficient, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll say that change and innovation, because if you want to sustain for a longer period of time, now with time you have to change and innovate. Otherwise, time will change you. That's what I think.
You missed.
We probably will have a unicorn either between 1 year or 10 is what this panel seemed to think. But thank you all for being here.